This is We the Sales Engineers Podcast, show 224.
Welcome to We the SEs Podcast, the show for sales engineers by sales engineers with your host, Ramsey Majaba.
What's up, SE Nation? Welcome back to another episode. We live in a world where it's continuously changing. We kind of learn one thing one day, the next day it's obsolete, and then we have to learn the next thing, and then the next thing, and then the next thing. So, and this is a little bit more emphasized in the security world, where there's a new threat every day, there's a new attack every day. So how does one maintain their knowledge, given that they work with customers on a daily basis? How does a leader enable that culture and enable people to become experts in different things? How does a leader know that they're a good leader and work to improve? These are all questions that Tanner Howell and I discussed today. And you will notice that I had a little bit too much fun on this call. I really enjoyed talking to Tanner. It was very laid back. I shared a little bit more of my thoughts than I usually do on podcasts, but I really enjoyed talking to Tanner about these different topics, and I hope you enjoy as well. So let's jump into the show. Good morning, Tanner. How you doing?
Living the dream, man. How are you?
I am doing well. I wish, what's the dream? What does it mean living the dream? I'm going off tangent from the beginning.
I got it from a buddy of mine that when I started my career, we worked together a lot. And it's just like the perfect greeting because, I don't know, things like could always be worse, but we're live and it's Monday and I don't know. Now that I'm like articulating it, I don't know why I say it. It's something I always say.
Has anyone ever asked you what is the dream?
Yes. And then I do the classic panic and I go, nightmares are dreams too, right? Just try to let's not dive into this and unpack it.
I don't know why I brought this up, but sometimes I feel like when we greet other people, and by the way, we'll introduce you in a second, but when we greet people, either our answer is yeah, good, but we're not really good, or we say something and the people, I ask you how you doing, you say good, and then that's the end of the conversation, right? And a lot of times, and it relates to sales engineering in the sense that we need to care a little bit about hey, how's the day for the customer?
Right.
Are they having a good day? Can I joke with them? Can I ask them what's the dream? Right.
Yeah.
So
well, that's exactly it, right? If you can tell someone's not into it and not in a joking mood, and you start slinging jokes at them left and right, they're going to be like, "Who's this guy?" And
yeah.
Can you calm down?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of felt that you're in a good mood today, which is why I went down that tangent of what's the dream. If you were pissed off, that would have been a very bad move on my end.
Hey, I can't complain, man. It is going to be a beautiful sunny day, and we are through winter, so that is the dream right there. I'm going on the record. That is the dream today. Is that it's a sunny day.
Living in a sunny day, that's the dream. I'm coming from Canada. Yes, 100%. So.
Oh yeah.
Now, I guess now it's time to introduce yourself. Who are you, and why do you have a dream?
So my name's Tanner Howell. I head up the sales engineering organization at a cybersecurity upskilling company called RangeForce. So basically, a way for cybersecurity professionals to stay up to date on different tooling, on different threat actor behaviors and different malware samples. So it's an interesting twist on the, what's the phrase I'm looking for? Historic sales engineering role. Whereas rather than doing implementations, because we're a SaaS solution, ours is more about knowledge of our space, right? Different types of cybersecurity professionals and being able to converse with them.
So I find cybersecurity fascinating. In the sense that it's always changing. There's always something that someone's trying to break something. I'm in networking. Things are changing, but no one's trying to steal all my information while building a backhaul network. And so it's less risk. Whereas cybersecurity, there's high risk, And so if you give the wrong information, the people you're
Yeah.
talking to are very savvy, like customer side.
Oh yeah.
They're very savvy and they know their system. They might not be as up to date as sales engineers, but how do sales engineers stay up to date in such a tough industry?
So there's a couple ways about it, right? I mean, the nice thing about us being an upskilling platform is that we can eat our own dog food. For example, if a new CVE comes out, right, new vulnerability, we're going to have training on it. So then we'll just do our own training. Obviously, we'll do research externally, but that didn't really answer your question. The other way that we really do, we build out these specializations, right? So like on my team, there's a guy who is better at red teaming or penetration testing than the rest of us. And like come from a incident response blue teaming background, so my team will defer to my knowledge to kind of be the rising tide lifting all ships. So we basically take this gigantic thing, because you're right, it's gigantic, it's ever changing. How do you know it all? We break it into manageable chunks, and then each person becomes kind of an expert in that.
Okay, and in terms of like supporting the customers, are you guys in a pooled model, or are you tied one to a couple of salespeople?
Yeah, we're tied 1 to 2.
So if someone comes, if you're an SE covering a couple of salespeople, and a question comes to you, you're in a meeting, and you said you're more experienced in the blue team, which is, I guess, the good guys.
The good guys. Those are the good guys.
Yeah. But a question comes up, I guess, for a red team question. How do you manage that on the spot? And then what do you do behind the scenes?
So, I mean, on the spot, I, as that sales engineer, need to know enough about what a red teamer or a penetration tester would want to be able to answer that question. But on the side, I'm going to know internally, who do we have that's a total subject matter expert, and be like, hey, like they're asking about XYZ. Like, what are your thoughts on that? And then, we can back channel that conversation.
Okay. So you have to have enough.
That's a very fringe case though, because usually the conversations we have are with the security management. It's more overarching strategy than.
Okay. So it's not getting into the weeds. It's more information that the decision makers can actually use.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. So how do you, like, as an individual who's like, I'm in networking, right? I focus on networking. I focus on different aspects of networking. When I talk to CTOs and that sort of stuff, my experience doesn't really translate to talking about strategy, especially as an individual. How do people, like, and that's just an example. I'm very good at strategy if people are listening, maybe. But like, how do individuals get that knowledge to be able to be technical, right? Specialize in different areas, and then have strategic conversations with tough customers who are worried about their livelihood, because if something bad happens, they might get fired. It's not an easy role.
First off, right, from an organization standpoint, our main focus is on that blue team angle. So like that is the main pillar that my team needs to be the most competent in. And then that comes tying into knowing the product. Like if someone says, well, do you have content for this kind of individual? Being able to know offhand, like, yes, we do. And then getting that customer to evaluate it, rather than having it be a knowledge check of me as an individual. I'm kind of guiding you, if you will, towards something that's pertinent to you that will make you see the value in what we do.
So you're not flat out telling the customer you should do this. It's more like little tiny breadcrumb questions to get them to realize, oh, I should do this.
Yeah, it's kind of like, and I'm rolling my eyes at myself at this analogy, but it was the only one I could think of on the spot. But it's kind of like when someone's summoning Everest, they have the Sherpa with them who knows the mountain better than them, and they're kind of walking up with them.
So
I know, dude, it's super stretch analogy. I'm rolling my eyes at myself. It was just off the cuff.
It's good. You're the Sherpa. Is that what they're called?
Yeah.
You're the Sherpa. Well, you're trying to find a way to give yourself the title Sherpa. So Tanner Sherpa Howell. That's your name.
Sherpa Howell. Yes.
So tell your all your employees. Those.
I'm gonna update my LinkedIn. I'm gonna update my LinkedIn right now.
Actually, I would love to see that. If you do, please let me know.
I will. I will.
But yeah, so how does one become a Sherpa?
I mean, that is the $1,000,000 question, right? Like, how do you get to that point? I feel like we just segued into the second topic we wanted to talk about. How do you get to that point where you feel confident enough in your abilities to guide someone towards that realization, right? Like, how do you go to a CISO and tell them, like, no, the way you're doing your cybersecurity training is all wrong? Like, nobody wants to be told their baby's ugly, but how do you get them to go, oh, there's a different way we could do this. There's a better way we could do this.
Okay.
That's
Yeah. Before we get to that second, I guess, point, going back to the first point, we want to talk about openness learning.
got ahead of myself.
How does one become, like, have the knowledge to guide people up Everest? Right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, you got to
you-
be learning all the time, right? You can never get complacent. There's a joke in this industry that there's like the dog years of cybersecurity. Every year is like 7, and like you have to be reading the news. You have to, find different, for lack of a better phrase, like threat feeds, right? Get open source intelligence out there, like see what researchers are saying. And it can be really daunting, but I mean, the nice thing about cybersecurity, and one of the things I love the most about it, is that like everybody here is very passionate. Everybody wants to keep learning. Everybody wants to build the perfect system, to use a Tron reference. And what it does is it creates a really collaborative environment where everybody's sharing what they're learning with the next person, who's then getting their knowledge out of it, applying the not prerequisite, but earlier knowledge they already had, passing it to that third person who put their take on it, and then you have this like giant communal knowledge of different threat actors, different malware variants, et cetera, et cetera.
So is it like each SE on their own are going out doing their own research and then combining the information all together?
Yeah, I mean, so we kind of, and that's, I mean, every team will be run differently. That's kind of how I run my team. Is I say we're all adults. Like, this is the broad vision. Like, I'm not going to micromanage you as you execute towards it. I just care that you're up to date on the latest threats. That's the goal. If you want to read, I don't know, Reddit as your sole source, as long as you're getting the actual, I probably wouldn't recommend that, but as long as you're getting to that goal, like, I'm not going to micromanage my people to get there. And then we do internal knowledge sharing sessions on what we find.
In my head, it just popped up, like, would it be, or how would it be different if you had a team that does the research and provided a newsletter to everybody instead of everybody, like, because SEs, from what I've seen, I'm not experienced at all. We're always, if we're spending time learning, that means we're time away from our customers. Right? So how do we maximize our learning time, or how do we make it the most efficient as possible, so that our salespeople don't get pissed off at us when we tell them, like, hold on one second, I need to go learn, or tell like our spouses, our significant others, like, okay, I'm gonna have to spend the night researching stuff, so less time for you and the kids, or whatever your situation is.
Well, and that one, I mean, that last one that you just said, I mean, that is a big one, right? I mean, I have a book right here for a cert that I want to take that I still have yet to crack open because my 6-month-old is teething. And by the end of the day, my wife is like, I just need like an hour. And I'm like, well, I can't be like, no, I'm going to lock myself in my office and I'm going to, study. But to answer that first question, I mean, I think that that's the responsibility of, that SE leader and that senior sales management to know that your SEs need to stay up to date. If your SEs walk into a customer demo, for example, and they're talking about a product that got bought out a year ago, the customer is going to go like, these guys don't know what they're doing, right? So it's my job, and if my team's listening, I hope that they're agreeing with me. It's my job as their leader to make sure that they have clear education goals set for them, and that if they want guidance on how to get them, I'll give them guidance, or I can, just let them be free range, if you will. But they're also given time to do that. So, hey, Friday afternoons, block your calendar from 2 to 4, unless, obviously a big customer comes in, that will be protected focus time.
Yeah, so I agree with pretty much everything you said. If I wanted to push back to play devil's advocate, because that's what I do. If everyone's booking their Friday afternoon off, and knowing salespeople, every customer is a big customer. Whether that's true or not, that's a different story.
Yeah.
So how does one actually protect their calendar without getting the boss involved every single time? Because you, like the boss, the salesperson, the sales engineer manager, has other crap to do in terms of hiring, firing, goal setting, and all that crap. How do people actually manage that?
I think that really boils down to that SE AE relationship, right? Like, not to say like it's transactional or it's give or take, but like if your AE is trying to book your Friday, like then block, move that hour to Wednesday or something like that, right? Yeah. But know that if your AE is taking that protected time, it actually is a big one, not just, I don't know, like one guy who's like, oh, I'm very interested, I'm an influencer. And you're like, okay, but like, did this have to happen right now? Did we have to drop everything for this one?
Yeah. So something about I've experienced is that even if someone puts something on your calendar, doesn't automatically mean you have to accept.
Right? Also true.
You can always say like, what is this about? As you can tell, when you looked at my calendar before booking this, passive aggressive, I have another meeting booked. Can we move this a couple hours earlier or later?
Exactly.
And more often than not, the salesperson's like, oh, sorry, I forgot to look at your calendar. Let me just bump it up a couple hours or move it around. So it's less of a problem than we make it out.
Yeah. Well, and that was a way more elegant way than what I was trying to say. Because I was implying that you said it. I mean, what's that phrase? That was the quiet part out loud of like just asking to move the meeting. Like,
yeah. But here's the thing. I was talking to another gentleman who got a meeting set up for an hour and a half. He was on the YouTube channel a while back talking about this problem, and the salesperson set up an hour and a half, and he was getting annoyed. Like, what? Why an hour and a half? Or what am I gonna do filling up the hour and a half? And he comes and talks to me and like, do you need to talk for an hour and a half? Did you ask your salesperson? It's like, let me ask him. Do we need the hour and a half? No, I just booked it in case we need it. End of problem.
And then like that was it, right? Yeah. It also, in my opinion, like it makes us look really good to the customer. Like there's the phrase like, if you can be anything in this world, be the person who ends a meeting early. Like if you give that person back 20 minutes of their time or 30 minutes of their time, like they're going to be like, oh, like obviously that I am not suggesting book 90-minute demos and then always end them early. But like if you get given that big block of time, you're not stuck in that call, right? It can wrap.
I don't mind giving like putting 90 minutes every time for a demo, mainly because it gives us time for conversations. If I do a good job in a demo, there's going to be conversations. But and then I have the option to end it early. And something I noticed, if I tell the customers like, hey, I booked an hour, but I want to I booked an hour and a half, but I only want to take an hour of your time. And then we get into conversations and we go over a little bit longer, then I lied, right? I lied to them. I promised them an hour. Right. If I don't say anything, so it worked. Like they're happy if I finish early. So yeah, it's okay. So setting up an hour a week sounds reasonable. Is your preference to set up like a block of time for 2 hours on a Friday afternoon or like half hour every day? Which is your preference?
And this is where, it all depends on the individual, right? And the way the teams run. I prefer the bigger block of time because what I find if I'm doing like half hours, I'm context switching. Like by the time I like sit down, I get my coffee and I crack open this book that I promise I'm going to read for the cert. But a half hour, I'm only really going to get like 15, 20 minutes of like focus time. Where if I block 2 hours, I'm probably going to get an hour and a half to an hour 45 of, head down time. Assuming that my kids aren't home and don't just watch in my office.
That's very interesting because I feel like I'm the opposite. I can focus for a half hour straight. I mean, I'll go get my coffee a little bit beforehand and I sit down and work on it. But for an hour and a half, I always get people pinging me. And because it's half hour, I can say, you know what, I'm just not going to respond until the end of the half hour. But that's just, so there's two different methods to, I guess, everything.
Personal style.
Yeah. So how have you been able to build that team culture of at least learning and sharing that
Yeah.
information? Because I've seen a lot of SEs who learn and keep that information to themselves, not because they're selfish or anything, just they're busy.
Yeah. I think it's really interesting. I actually do think that COVID really helped in this manner, right? Because when we all were in an office, it is very easy to, I'm assuming positive intent, right? Nobody tries to hoard information, but it's
Yeah.
easier to fall into clicks in an office setting. And when you're fully remote, you have to be more cognizant of the interactions you're having, right? A conversation over Zoom is, you can have this one-to-one conversation, right? And that will feel pretty much the same, but in a group setting, right, it's very different. When you have 12 people in a conference room, you're gonna have 6 different conversations going. If you pull 12 people into a Zoom call and try to have 6 conversations, nobody's talking, right? So what we've done in my team is we've sorry, I'm rambling. One, it's about expectation management, right? If we're on a team call, I expect everybody to participate. I don't want the camera off, mic's not on, like, are you napping? Are you not? Like, there's an expectation set there from a presentation and a participation standpoint. And I think COVID helped normalize that kind of openness on a digital call that we didn't have even 2 years ago. That's kind of a hot take, so I would love to hear your thoughts on it.
I agree. So depends on me. Like I've been on calls where the manager expects everybody on camera, but there's 30 people.
Well, that's.
And so I'm off camera until I'm asked a question. I don't care. And I've been on meetings where on camera is expected, but all the meeting content does not affect me in any way, shape, or form. Right. So if on the other hand, I've been on meetings with less people on the call, and the information is very pertinent to me, I'm on it. Right. I have nothing against it. So I guess it depends on is the meeting going to be useful to me as an individual, and is it just a bunch of people hanging around, right?
And I guess that, to be clear, I was talking about the first night where it's a smaller, more intimate team meeting, whether it's, regional or global or whatever. But yes, I 100% agree. When you pull 100, 200 people into a call.
Well, yeah, even 30, like 20, 30 people. So we have a big team, and I am in a weird position where I am the only one who covers a certain set of product lines. Everybody else covers everything else, and the managers cover the other product line. So I'm kind of shoehorned into that team. So a lot of the discussions that they have nothing to do with me. So I am a special case, right? And I like to think that of myself, anyways. So when I'm on that call, a lot of times it's useless to me, and I get angry if my boss says anything like, "Hey, Ramsey, why aren't you on camera?" Well, because none of this information is important to me and it's going to help me do my job. On the other hand,
what's the response you get to that?
Sorry?
What's the response you get to that? Just out of curiosity, does he kind of like say like, "Hey, like it is what it is," or?
Well, no.
Like, I would suggest like if my response to that would be then why I would challenge why you would need to be there.
Well, so I don't talk about that on the call with the boss in front of 30 people. Well, but right. I've talked to them before the calls. I'm like you seem to want me there for some reason. I'm going to be there for you, but don't be surprised if I take calls or if I do other things at the same time, because this might not be useful for me. And if there's something that you want to share with me, please mention my name before you actually share it, so I don't caught off guard.
You're not scrambling to turn the mic on.
Yeah. So, and he's fine with that. Yeah. I mean, you mentioned earlier, we're all adults, right? He's a very good manager. He's not there for gotchas or whatever. If it's not useful for me, he just wants me to be part of the team, which makes sense, right? It's not a bad thing. It's a team call. Be part of the team. Show yourself when you need to, but also understand that a lot of it might be useless to you. And so it's that's the part, like it's all
Give and
communication.
take.
Yeah, it's all communication. I'm not a little angry boy who wants to yell at his boss, and my boss is not a tyrant.
Yeah.
And that's, I think most people are like that.
Yeah, I mean, it's a people leader of mine used to say, he always would say, like, assume positive intent. Nobody goes out of their way to be like, how do I get this person today? I mean, I guess those people are out there, but generally speaking, like everybody wants to do well. Everybody wants, believes in the mission. And
yeah, and I can share a story about that. I had a previous boss who would say something and do something completely different and would get really angry at him. I got really angry at him. But as soon as in my mind, I started thinking like, hey, what was the intention? Was the intention to burn me? No. I realized that after I dug into it, this guy brainstorms out loud with someone and then makes the decision later. So the conversation is not a decision-making conversation. It's more of a brainstorming conversation.
Yeah.
And once I understood that, I learned that for the next time we have this conversation, I will not I will understand that he might make a different decision later, and I need to follow up with him to make sure the decision is positive for me. It's my job at that point. So, yeah. And I'm talking too much for this podcast. I don't like that. So,
sorry.
What do you want to talk about? No, I'm putting you on the spot. I have several questions for you.
Okay.
So you're building that team culture. Everybody's jumping on the call. How do you make sure, especially through Zoom, that there's this one kid lurking in the back, not saying anything? He's listening to everything, but he's not participating. And sooner or later, they might feel like left out of the team or whatever. How do you make sure that everybody has equal voice? Not necessarily that everybody has to have equal voice. Senior people might have a bigger voice than junior people, but how do they become senior and get a bigger voice?
Yeah, I mean, that's where I feel it's my responsibility as the team lead to be aware of who's chiming in, who's not, and then following up that individual of, are you just, new? Are you still learning? You're not comfortable challenging some preconceived notions, but then communicating to that, that individual of, please, like, if you see something that's wrong, challenge it. I like to, talking about the culture of the team, we run a team of humility. If someone is wrong, they want to be told, like, hey, there's a better way to do this, or hey, this fact you said, like, hey, it's not quite this way, right? So, sorry, I kind of butchered this, but I guess what I'm trying to say is that you as a leader have to build that foundation for everybody in your team to feel empowered to chime in. Right. And one thing that helps with that is, and you have to do this with a remote company, because in an office, you'll bump into, I don't know, you and I will bump into each other getting coffee in the morning. We're going to have that little conversation, hey, Ramsey, how's your day going? Oh, it's going great. Awesome. See you around. And that little bit of interaction builds company culture. It builds rapport between employees. Now, in a remote setting, you're going to get Slack or Teams or whatever you use, and you can, have the chats that way, but you don't get that human, you know what I mean? That casual dialogue. You're never going to ping someone randomly on Slack and say, "Living the dream?" ? Unless you want to have a conversation with that individual. So, we do happy hours, bi-weekly happy hours, just get together, let our hair down, we like to say a little bit, do the water cooler chat, every other alternating week. And what that does is that builds that rapport between the team, and it makes them, I'm going to quote a mentor of mine, it makes them that high performance team because they all know and trust each other. They're going to be more open to interacting with each other in group settings.
That's interesting. Have you heard of a software called Gather.town?
I think so.
So it's basically, it looks like a game.
Okay.
But people join a workspace and they can have focus time, but if they're moving around, I don't know why they would move around, but if they are, their cameras or mics are on. So if two people are walking across each other, the cameras pop up and they can have a conversation as they're walking past each other, or if they want to meet, or they go together to a meeting room or have a conference. I haven't been able to use it as much
No, I'm definitely gonna check it out. It sounds awesome.
Yeah, but yeah, so if you want to have that office vibe and water cooler talk, it might be useful. It's a, I don't know, new technology, I guess, that with with COVID, it might be useful. I don't know. We'll figure that out.
It definitely will be interesting over the next couple of years as offices open up. You know, one, like, what does this remote, work of the future look like? Is that still going to be something we say in 2025, 2027? And then what about those technologies we built out to enable it?
Well, yeah, well, that's interesting because I haven't had to go to the office in like 5 years.
I'll never go to an office again. I'm on the record. I was recorded saying it. There's something, when we had our first child, I went into an office and like I had my 2 weeks of paternity leave. I went in and like I would come home and like my wife was exhausted. I take the baby. For our second child, I work from home now in my current company and in my role. And it was awesome, man. Like I could go get coffee. I could see the baby in the middle of the day during my lunch. Like that quality of life measurement, well, the quality of life improvement is immeasurable. And like I don't spend time sitting in traffic. And I think that we're going to see, and I know this is totally not the topic of this podcast.
No, it's fine. We can go off tangent.
I think that we're going to see companies have to, my personal opinion, we're going to have to be flexible and allow this, remote work revolution to continue because the talent is going to demand it. I mean, I'm seeing it already with people, I have interviewed recently and hired someone for my team, and half the candidates, the first question they had is there an office? Or I'm like, no, you're remote. And they're like, all right, cool.
I'd like the option of the office. I'm not sure I would ever use it. But so here's the question. What do you do with the commute, what used to be a commute time?
I sleep.
Nice.
I sleep another half hour every day, and it's magical. No, the serious answer is
no, that's good. It's good, man. Like that's healthy. I don't know why people are against sleep. I love to sleep. I just can't, but I love to sleep.
Well, my 6-month-old is teething, so I can't right now either. Or she won't allow me. No, I actually take my time with my coffee. We all have those little, I don't say rituals, but like the morning motions. And I make a pour over and I take my time with it. And I grind the beans and all that. And I always felt like my mornings were sprinting, right? Got to get the kids to daycare, grab my coffee. I left it on the counter, getting to work as fast as I can and actually get to take the time and enjoy it. Maybe sit on the porch or something for 10 minutes when it's not winter.
Yeah. You're in Michigan, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you have a cold winter as well. But what about after work? So here's why I'm asking. I used to have a 30-minute commute.
Yeah.
And it used to give me the chance to listen to a podcast, switch from work.
Yeah.
Boom. I get home. I see the kids, help with the house, all that. Now I have the time from my office to walk up the stairs. And I'm still in that email that my customer sent that's just nasty. Right? That mode. And I pop up and my son wants to play basketball. I'm like, what? What's basketball right now? How do you do that?
So, I mean, this is one of those, put the asterisk at the end of the sentence, your mileage may vary, see terms and conditions. What I do, I mean, you definitely, the short answer is you have to be cognizant of that context switching, right? So I'm in my office right now. I leave work in my office. So when I exit out that door, I make the purposeful effort, for lack of a better phrase, to leave work Tanner in this room. I might come back later that night to follow up on that email, for example, but I'm going to, now I'm home, right? And what you asked what I spend the time doing, I actually cook now instead of throwing chicken nuggets in the microwave or something like that. I'm actually taking the time to, make dinner. And I find while I'm chopping vegetables, that helps me, really leave work behind, right? Because you can't just, it's not a switch. But going downstairs, if my wife's picking up our daughters that day, chopping up an onion, scoring some chicken or whatever, that action will help me leave work behind for the day. But it's something you have to be cognizant of. because when the pandemic first hit, I'd work until like 8, and I was just like, well, I got to keep working. Like, I got to keep doing it. I got to keep doing it. And making that transition to, I'll come back to it later. It takes time and it takes effort.
So how do you make sure your team is doing that as well? Like as a
Oh,
leader of your team?
Well, okay, so there's two ways. So one, I mean, I keep an eye on if they're like online and it's like 7, I'll be like, what are you doing? Why are you sending messages at 7 at night? And they'll be like, oh, I was up, I was just gonna send it real quick. Okay. Naughty. Like, don't do that. I want you to spend time with your families. And then I have to lead from example, right? I have to lead from the front. If and admittedly knowing my blind spots, or not blind spots because I'm not blind to it, I'm really bad at taking vacation. It's a joke on my team that they will ignore my Slack messages, and I'm then slacking them more. So I'm like, I know you're just ignoring me because you want me to take the day off, but I actually need you to acknowledge this right now. And then they'll be like, okay, acknowledge. Like, now go to the water park. Like, stop messaging us. But other than that, I try to make these general rules. Like, obviously, if I don't know, my sales rep needs me and it's 5:30, like, I'm not going to be like, sorry, try again tomorrow. But I might, nudge them in, hey, this resource is still online because they're on the West Coast. Like, do you need me or do you need a sales engineer? Because those are 2 different questions. Other than my inability to take a full day off, which is a Tanner problem, not a company problem, I yell at my team if I see them online when they shouldn't be. Not yell, but be like, hey, like, you don't need to do this. Like, go do your life, man. Like, we'll be here.
Yeah. So I had a boss similar to you, but it bugged me. It bugged me that he's messaging people on their on his vacation.
Oh yeah.
That's the example. All right, I guess I have to work on my vacation. Versus my boss right now takes 2 weeks off, which I never thought was possible. Does not answer phone, does not answer email. Like, I mean, he answers, like, says, if there's anything urgent, text me. But if, like, he has someone to back them up and all that. So I prefer, like, if you were, do your team a favor.
I know.
Put it that way. And stop messaging them on. Like, but do you have a backup?
Yeah, I mean, I'll delegate someone on my team, but it's like I said, it's a Tanner thing. I don't know why. I just, even when I'm off, like, I'm like, I'll see, like, what I need to start doing is I need to just take my email and Slack off my phone when I go on vacation. So I see this little notification. I'm like, it's like the dopamine hit. I'm like, well, I'll just check it real quick. I'm waiting for my wife real quick. I'll just check it, and then.
Here's a question for you. Why do you need, if you're working from home all the time, why do you need Slack and email on your phone?
Because I like working from my phone.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. You're a stranger man.
Well, also, like, if we're doing like a meeting or something, I might take a walk. So then I'll, boot up the meeting from my phone and take a lap around the neighborhood or something. Right. So it's convenience.
Okay. All right, cool. That's a good answer. I'll take that. All right. Was there anything that you wanted to talk about that I didn't ask about? Should I have asked the question that you really wanted to talk about and I didn't?
No, I mean, the one thing I guess is managing people with more experience than you. That was one thing that we did mention as a potential topic if we wanted to.
Yeah, so that's an interesting question. Go ahead.
Well, so it's interesting, right? It ties into the learning conversation we were having earlier, right? I mean, I try not to lead I try to be cognizant, right, of not being a manager, right? People don't want to be managed; they want to be led. Yeah. And actually, I'm reading John Kerr's book right now on managing sales engineering teams, and the intro. And I'm going to butcher this, and if he's listening, John, I'm so sorry. But basically what he's talking about is like when people transition from individual contributor to manager and they've never been a manager before, they lean into their strengths. So the product knowledge, their sales knowledge, stuff like that. Yeah. And I read this excerpt and I was like, oh, wow, like I'm looking in the mirror right now, like touche. Again, I butchered that quote. It's a phenomenal read. I very much have been enjoying it. So I took a step back after I read that, and I kind of thought, okay, well, yes, I may know our product better, but am I really going to have the hubris to think that I am the only one who can craft messaging, who can, craft how we posture our demos, build out our talk tracks? So being able to take that step back and look at someone who has 30 years experience and say like, hey man, like, obviously you have way more experience than me. Like, how would you do this? And then instead of treating those, not that I ever would, but treating those people like subordinates, almost like they're partners, right? They're pushing the technical innovation forward. They're pushing the talk tracks, the different parts of the organization. And then my role becomes more of the puppet master. What's everybody doing? If so-and-so is doing this activity, is there opportunity for collaboration over here or with different teams, managing those stakeholder relationships between product and sales, and then really providing air cover for them. I mean, we like to push the boundaries a little bit sometimes. And then, when someone, product's like, well, like, why are you positioning the product that way? Being like, don't talk to them, talk to me. Like, let me give them air cover.
Nice.
So that's kind of my philosophy on it. I don't know, maybe someone's listening and rolling their eyes, and if you have a better method, please let me know. But I've seen good success with it, right? I mean, these people are professionals, right? Like we said earlier, we're all adults. But the knowledge that they can bring in, if you approach it as, my job here is to empower that individual, years of experience don't matter as much.
So yeah,
that might be a bit of a hot take.
Well, I like it because I've worked with sales engineer managers who are still in the field, still working with the product. And in my mind, it's like, you're not doing your job. Your job is to enable somebody else to do what it is you're doing. And your job is to see, like, if you're so much in it, you're not going to see the bigger picture, which is what you said. Like, you're not going to see like, oh, this person is doing the same thing as this person. Why aren't they working together versus trying to do things separately? And it also now builds camaraderie between the teammates. Like, hey, we have this common goal. We need to finish this cert together, right? Instead of each of us doing it separately, let's do it together. So yeah, I like that. That's pretty good.
Yeah, and I mean, that I also see that as like a core responsibility, right? Building that team mentality and that, like, like you said, hey, let's collaborate for those superior results, right? Like, let's work together, and really, foster that bond between your team. So I mean, that's one thing I'm really proud of, is like my team is very tight knit. Like, we cover for each other. We're all friends. We'll get a beer, or coffee or whatever. And at the end of the day, we're friends and coworkers, and it helps us be more open with each other and perform our jobs better.
So you weren't an SE manager when you joined the company, or where did you join the company? How did you have the confidence to take the SE manager role when there are more experienced people around that may resent it, or whatever feelings they may have around it? I guess that's the question. How did you have the confidence to do it?
So it's interesting, right? So I joined the team as an individual contributor, and then I may not have had, 20, 30 years experience. I still had years of experience, and they were still very relevant and pertinent to the problem that we're solving. And it made me, good at my job, for lack of a better phrase, right? I was good at my job. And yeah, maybe I didn't have 30 years of experience, but I was closing a lot of business. Obviously, I knew the product, and then, calling out that part in John Kerr's book, right? You take the highest performing SE and just go, all right, well, do you want it? And I thought about it, and I did. Like, I was like, I want to see if I can do this. I've always seen like people leadership, building people up as like my next step, for lack of a better phrase. And so when they said, hey, do you want to lead the team? I kind of said, yeah, why not? Let's. I mean, my leader was also grooming me for it. It wasn't like I showed up on Monday and they were like, all right, Tanner, like, you want the big job now? My leader at the time, he was grooming me for it. He was teaching me his leadership style. He was, teaching me kind of the ropes of how do you manage these types of technical personalities. So when I took it, I mean, I felt ready for it. It was a little scary, but
what did your mentor or manager see in you that he decided to groom you versus somebody else? Have you ever had that discussion with them?
What's funny is we never explicitly had the conversation.
Were you never curious about it?
I mean, I guess now I am. Like at the time, like it was like, hey, like I want you to take the team over after me. Like, okay, like that sounds awesome. Let's do it. Which I guess it shows the trust that I had in his vision. That I wasn't actively challenging it. I mean, what I expect and assume is that I like the people angle, right? The internal stakeholder management. Like he saw that in me. Like I enjoy talking to our VP of product and giving our feedback and delivering that in a way where it's actionable, but it's not sugar coated. I enjoy that a lot. Like I enjoy, working with people to solve their problems, not just from the technical side. That the sales engineering part fulfills that, but also from that personal side, right? What does work engagement look like? What is vacation expectations stuff?
I find solving human problems is the hardest part of any role.
I would agree with that.
Yeah, mainly because technology, it always works the way, there might be some bugs, but there are rules around. Humans are just crazy from what I've seen. Like each one thinks differently. Like what two brothers could be totally different. Twins could be totally different personalities. I'm like, pick one so I can work like with one person versus two. So
no, you said it best. I mean, it's it's a challenge, and I was kind of like, yeah, let's do it.
Yeah.
I mean, I take definitely the the leading from the front mentality, right? Like there's been a couple times where we've had to do a POC and it's been, they want us on the call and their team's over in Mumbai. So, hey, can you guys be on at, I can't do time zones in my head. So I'm not going to say any actual times, but let's say, 9 p.m. your time, I'm going to be the first person on that call as well. I'm not going to, delegate that out and then clock out at 5, right? That's the office space type management of, hey, we're going to need you to come in on Saturday and then on Sunday, right?
Yeah. Well, it's being willing to do the dirty work yourself versus delegating for somebody else. Yeah, no, I like that. Have you read the book Extreme Ownership by Jocko Willink?
I am not, but let me write that down.
That's one book I highly recommend. It's about leadership. And I don't think they would agree with you about leading from the front, but I think your terminology might be
a little different.
Like that's not leading. For me, that's just leading. It's yeah, but that's great. But it's a highly recommended book. And if you can get the audiobook, because the authors are Jocko Willink and Leif Babin, they're Navy SEALs.
Oh wow.
You might not be a Navy SEAL by the end of it, but you'd feel like one. So you should definitely listen to that when you get the chance. All right, Daniel, this has been great. It's time to move on to the not so fire round. These are the same 4 questions I ask almost every guest. Have you heard them before?
I have. I know. I've just blanked them now. The moment that
it's okay. It's okay. I like to repeat them anyway because it makes me sound smart. All right. What do you love about sales engineering management or leadership? Sorry. Leadership.
I mean, I like solving those human problems, right? I mean, I know I'm getting redundant now, but we're all people. We're all, trying to navigate life, right? In the career of an individual, I'm getting all philosophical now. The career of the individual, like it's a core part of our existence. And I enjoy watching, people go through their careers, grow through them, and people in different stages, right? Someone who's just starting out, this might be their first or second job. Someone who is getting ready to retire in the next 5 years. What does that person's journey look like? And like just being proxy to that, I think is so cool. I got really philosophical really fast.
Listen, I love that. And that's the reason I'm loving coaching. Like I love sales engineering, but I love coaching way more because if I sell my product to my customer, I didn't change anybody's life. I mean, I got a bit of commission, so my wife and my children are happy. They can have food on the table. Not that we're like, not that that's what's putting food on the table.
I know what you mean.
But when I coach someone and they get a job, I mean, I've been receiving messages over the weekend, like offers coming or getting promotions or doing the great discovery that they wanted to do. That changes lives, right?
Yeah.
It means more people are putting food on the table for their families. It's just the best feeling in the world having that success.
And I one thing I say is like we are an amalgamation of like the leaders or the coaches we've had. I mean, there are certain philosophies or things I say because, you know, a former leader of mine said them, right? I have like isms, right? You know, I said one earlier, always be assuming positive intent. You know, no one wakes up in the morning going, I'm going to ruin Ramsey's day. Like, hopefully, you know, and that
my brother.
And that it's a team sport, right? That like there's too much for any one individual to do. And if you build up the single points of failure, you get hit by the beer truck or you get the flu, you know, what do you do after that, right? So building out that team mentality and that team dynamic. I know those are the things I enjoy doing. Makes me happy.
Can I ask you this? Like, hopefully you're going to be promoted or you might move to a different company, different team, whatever. Is there anyone that you are grooming to become an SE leader when you're gone?
Yes.
I don't know if you want to answer. Okay.
No, so not when I'm gone. I have no, if RangeForce leadership, if you're listening to this, I have no plans on leaving.
Well,
no, but right, you're right. As we grow our team, eventually, you know, we will probably have a designated EMEA division, right? So I have someone picked up for that. I'm gonna start grooming someone for just the Americas and then, you know, APAC. So, you know, spinning up those 3 main areas, and then eventually, you know, we'll spider web out from there. But
yeah,
that was a really long way to say yes.
Well, no, that's good. Good in my mind. Like you were talking earlier about enabling and all that, and having a single point of failure. Right now, you don't have a single point of failure, but some people might think like, oh, I'm now replaceable because I am teaching other people. How do you overcome that fear, or do you even care? Like, hey, they replace me, I'll go find a better job. How does your mentality work on that? Or have you never considered it?
I would say I get the question. I mean, in reality, and this is maybe my anecdote coloring my view on the world, I just don't think that's really. There was a LinkedIn post I saw the other day, and it was someone who they were trying to be provocative and like start the discussion. And his argument is that if you work remote, you don't take your job seriously.
Yeah, so I think I saw that one.
Yeah, and like basically saying like if it can be done remote, I cannot talk today. If it can be done remote, then they can outsource it, and you don't take your job seriously. And I don't think that's true. I think that, you know, I guess what I would say to that individual who's saying, oh, now I'm replaceable, I would say, no, like nobody's replaceable. Everybody brings their own experience, their own life view into the team that creates, you know, that team dynamic. I think that's why hiring is so important, of getting not just the technical fit, right? I want sales engineers that know the industry, that know, for me personally, what a cyber range is, that understands, you know, the skills. But if that person's impossible to work with and toxic in my team, that's a bad hire, right? So I guess what I'm saying is that I don't come across that much, because I would make the argument that that individual is a key part of the team. It's more than just the skills.
Yeah.
So hand motion.
I would disagree about like no one's replaceable. I think everyone's replaceable. But have you heard of the book So Good They Can't Ignore You?
Yeah.
By Cal Newport. So if you can achieve that, and then you're irreplaceable, and your skills might be bringing up other people, right? Yeah. That could be why you're irreplaceable, because of the fact that you can get people go to a higher level. But yeah, so yeah, that's a philosophical discussion.
Yeah.
All right, cool. So what would you change about the sales engineering manager role? other than higher salary and better commission?
You heard it here. The one thing, I know this is all my anecdote. I feel like we as a industry, especially with leadership, there's still kind of that player coach player, like at what point do you disengage, right? I understand the school of thought. I guess what I'm trying to say is, like, I wish that in this industry there was clearer delineation of this is the perfect sales engineering management system, but in reality, if that existed, I don't think any of us would have jobs. But there's a school of thought of, if you're leading the team, you should never be on a customer call. You should only be the big guns, or you should never, you're removed from customers, you're all internal. And then there's the school of thought of, if you're the director of sales engineering, then you are the big guns that come in the last few days of the quarter or for any deals that we might want to try to get in. And then there's also you still field calls, you still keep up to date on the product knowledge, still maintain yourself as an SME. There doesn't seem to be a right way, and me as a leader and as a person who admittedly is a little lazy, I wish there was the clear, concise, this is the one way to do it. So I could implement that, but then it wouldn't be the journey, there wouldn't be the learning. So that was a really not answer to that question.
No, it was a good answer, but I guess you're gonna have to figure out the answer on your own.
Oh yeah, I have no answer to that.
Yeah, so when you do have the answer, I want you to come back and we can have that.
I'll let you know.
Yeah.
All right.
All right. So we've talked about the Sales Engineer Manager book, handbook by John Kerr, Extreme Ownership, So Good They Can't Ignore You. Is there a resource you give to your brand new SEs, whoever joins the team, and tell, like, hey, whether it's a book, podcast, whatever, expose yourself to this resource so you can actually do your job?
So, and I promise I'm not just saying this because I'm on the podcast. I've actually put my team to this podcast, and I will give them episodes to listen to and say, like, this is something that I want to start the conversation on. For example, and I can't remember the episode number. I actually just listened to it this weekend while I was mowing my lawn. The one around social media engagement in B2B sales, right?
Okay.
LinkedIn, I mean, it's becoming an influencer in LinkedIn, right? I think, and I don't want to go down this tangent, but I think that it's a key part of being a successful sales engineer and making you and your product stand out and your brand stand out amongst, I don't want to call it the noise, but you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I give them this podcast. I give them.
Your check is in the mail.
Thank you. Yeah. Totally not a plant. And then it really depends on the individual, right? I can't remember the name of the book now. I think it's called Cybersecurity Sales. I can look it up in a second. But if they don't have a ton of sales experience before, I might give them, Sandler sales training books or Miller Hyman training books, or the cybersecurity sales one, which I can look up in my Audible real quick. I listened to it a while ago and I can't remember who wrote it. If they're, they need to be more technical, then I might recommend them towards different certs in our industry. So, your Security Plus, CISSP, et cetera, et cetera. And then the different handbooks around that. Or the, not the manager one, but the Mastering Technical Sales by John Kerr. Is that the,
Okay.
Yeah, that one.
Is it simplified cybersecurity sales for MSPs?
No, hold on. Give me 1 second. Let me look on my Audible.
Is audio your favorite method of consuming books?
It's actually, no, reading is, but I don't have time to read anymore.
Most convenient
under the age of 5. It is Cybersecurity Sales by Neil Saltman and Anthony Johnson.
Okay, cool.
Obviously, that was very industry specific.
So what is the cert you're working? What's the book that you're trying to crack open?
So I have it on my goals this year to get my CISSP, which is the Certified Information Systems Security Professional. And as you can tell, I'm very in depth into the study guide. That's why it's still in the plastic wrap. But I'm reading the 9th edition.
Oh, kinetic.
I just kind of.
You put your hand, I was gonna say your method is better. I was gonna say you put your hand, but no, you put your forehand on it and just absorb the information.
So this is the one I'm reading. I'm going to be reading by the time this episode comes out.
Okay. All right. So this episode will be out in like 6 weeks since recording.
Okay.
I'm gonna reach out to you the week before to see how you're doing. I'm gonna put the update of actually if you started this
Perfect.
in the show or not.
Perfect.
Okay.
So I'll crack it open 1 week plus 1 day before the episode comes out. Perfect.
Whatever works for you. I meant if you, I want to see that you received the cert by then. But hey.
Oh no, I won't have the cert, but I
No.
will have the study guide done.
Cool. All right. Last question of the day. I think I'm gonna put a twist to it because you brought up children. I usually ask, is there a habit you're working on to improve in your personal or professional life? But I want to change it. Is there a habit you're working on to be a better father for your children?
This is a deep one.
Yeah.
Honestly, the big one is being cognizant of the moment. Like with phones and work and just life these days, like I don't know, maybe I'm getting a little hippie here, but this digital environment we're in, like it's so easy to hear your phone buzz and look at it, right? Or someone sends you something on Instagram and you look at it, right? And you're missing those moments where your children are little, right? There's the famous TikTok viral soundbite going around saying like, you have little kids for 4 years and then that's it. And like, you don't get that time back. You don't get to go, oh, like it's, all right, I've gotten 6 years of my career done. Like now let's do the parenting thing. By that point, your child's 6 years old and that relationship and that cadence of interaction is established, right? So how do I, as someone who loves my job, I love my career, I love my field, but how do I leave that, for a moment to really focus, when my 3-year-old says, hey, let's build Legos. Hold on, let me get this RFP done real quick.
Yeah.
She's gonna be like,
real quick. RFP and real quick. Yeah, those go together. So it's there's a book called The One Thing. The author, his name is there's Gary Keller from Keller Williams and Jay Papasan. And they talk about family and work. And they compare work to a bouncy ball. If you drop it, it will bounce and you can catch it and keep going. Compare family to a glass ball. You drop it, it will shatter. Right? You will not get that time back. So I like that. I try to put my phone away, but now my big challenge is that my kids always want to listen to music off my phone. So my phone has to be with me to be able to put in whatever Voice Play is their new favorite band.
All right, I'll check them out. My 3-year-old's really into glass animals right now. So I know what you mean with hey, can we listen to music? I'm like, yeah, we can listen to some music.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean that's really it, right? I remember bringing my first child home from the hospital, and now she's starting preschool. Like that time, and I don't know, getting all like weepy dad, like, but that time's gone, and like I cherish it and I love it. But in reality, I've 6-month-old, and this probably is our last baby. So like I'm savoring every moment, trying to be very cognizant of it. And nobody's perfect, right? I mean, you have a big, exhausting day at work, and just kind of sit back and start scrolling Reddit. Next thing you know, it's 7:30, and you got to put the kids to bed. I mean, that was a bit of a hyperbolic exaggeration, but I mean,
no, I get that. Yeah, I also said my second baby will be my last, but my third baby disagreed.
Who knows, right? But like, I'm preparing myself in case it is. Like, I don't be like, oh, we'll do it again. Like that's
yeah. This has been great. Any final words before we go?
No, I just I feel like I met a celebrity. I mean, this is awesome being here. I love this podcast. I love what you're doing for our industry and our field. I think that it's validation to a lot of folks, these realizations or these things they struggle with and they come up to, hearing that someone else has gone through it, just that validation alone can help people really succeed. So big shout out. I promise I'm not just saying this because he's recording me. Big shout out to everything you do here. And the last thing is, I guess parting words for the audience is, really leaning into that, collaboration starts with me, right? It's a team effort, and there's so much to accomplish, to be done. Your peers, your leader, like those people and those relationships you build, you can't put a price tag on them. I still talk to people from my first job still get a beer with them, once a quarter, go get lunch with them. You can't put a price tag on those people relationships.
Yeah, I agree with that.
That's my parting line.
Let's call it a day. Thank you so much for coming on, Tanner. Talk soon.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Thank you, Tanner, for coming on. It was great having you. It was fun having you, and I look forward to talking to you again. I'm recording this outro a few months after we actually recorded the episode, and I noticed he did not change his title to Sherpa, and I'm very disappointed personally. But I guess he did the logical thing, and I thought of his career versus pleasing me. So I'm interested to hear what you guys think. How, as an individual sales engineer, how do you make sure that you're staying on top of things in a way that helps the customers? And as a leader, how do you make sure that your team is doing that and not doing it separately versus together? We want to share information, not hoard information. So these are questions that I ask almost everyone. I've asked them several times on the podcast as well, and we've had different questions, different answers, and common answers. So it's an interesting topic. And if you are looking for help, again, this is the time for the shameless plug for the hotline. If you're looking for help on how to do that, how to make sure that you're staying on top of things, how do you make sure you're learning and your knowledge is not becoming obsolete, check out the SE hotline. It is there for you. If you have any questions for me, make sure to book 15 minutes with me to chat and ask your questions, and let me know what you guys think. So with that, I'll be signing off.